With the latest agriculture news from across the state and nation, it's time for the AgNet News Hour from AgNet West. Here's your host, Sabrina Halvorson.
Good morning. Thanks for tuning in this morning. I am Sabrina Halvorson here with Lorrie Boyer.
Good morning.
It's World Ag Expo week, and so that's a big week out here in Central California, and I'm very excited just to chat about it with you, Lorrie. It's a huge show.
I said before we started, you might have to carry us a little bit more on this one. I admittedly have never attended World Ag Expo.
Yeah, it's big. I know that you recently were at the Colorado Ag Expo or Ag Show, and you are headed out to Commodity Classic in a couple of weeks. But the World Ag Expo first off, it's just huge. So this takes place outside at the International Agri Center in Tulare, and it's a very big space. I'm looking it up here. Let's see, 2.6 million square feet of exhibit space. So it's very, very large. Last year, the World Ag Expo drew in more than 100,000 people over the 3 days. It's a
From
lot.
all different countries, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
From all different countries, yes. There's about 1,200 exhibitors, and in those exhibitors, you have everything from huge, large farm equipment, great big harvesters and things. You also have like our input chemical companies, things like that, technology, lots of new technology. Shown displayed here at the World Ag Expo, which is always fun to come and see. And I know that you love ag tech. And so, next year we're going to talk you into going out there and seeing all of this new ag tech that's happening out there.
I think that's great. I love new technology. I just love seeing all the equipment. I'm going to out myself again. I have never been to the Farm Progress Show either, but I understand that's where they roll out a lot of the new stuff is there as well. I don't know that that's as international as this one though. So you're going to have these companies that are in other countries bringing out their new technology and their things that they're working on. It's got to be exciting and overwhelming at the same time.
Yeah, and what I really like, because I have also been to Farm Progress, but what I like about the World Ag Expo is it's totally different types of equipments and things. So, the World Ag Expo has more of that specialty crop focus and also a big dairy focus. And those are two things that you don't find out at Farm Progress. And for listeners who maybe don't know, but Farm Progress is another large, big farm show, but this happens in the Midwest. I think they have two different places. One year it's in Iowa, the next year it's in Illinois, and they go back and forth. And it's a good show. It's a good show, don't get me wrong, but I strongly prefer the World Ag Expo. Again, because a lot of it is geared toward the specialty crops, and they have a big dairy section, and it's so interesting to go in and get to see, the latest in dairy, advancements and the technology there and the equipment, and they have like a small milking barn and things like that, which are just always so fun to see.
Yeah, 90, I'm reading on the website here, by the way, 90 educational seminars, demonstrations, and workshops. 90. Wow. That's a lot.
That is a lot. And that was something that they've really been expanding on also in the last several years as well, making this someplace where you can go and go to good seminars. And I do have to say I'm one of the speakers this year as well. So I'm excited for that. I'm in the new, there's a Women in Ag Pavilion, and this has gone through kind of a big change because it used to be something that kind of rubbed me the wrong way. The Women in Ag Pavilion was like quilts and canning and things like that. And there's a place for that, but they've really have modernized to show women actually play a big part in ag. Actually involved on the farm, making decisions. We're farm owners. We do all of it. So that has taken kind of a new, there's a new light shining on that, and I'm very excited for that as well.
The last figure I saw, 30% of farm operators in the United States were women, and that figure was growing.
Yes, exactly. So the Women's Conference Pavilion, I think, is the new name for this, and they have several different sessions going on there as well that, are a little bit more for women involved in ag. Of course, it's relevant to everybody, but
Mhm.
and there's also, I have to say, something else you don't see at most farm shows. This may be a California thing, but the wine and cheese pavilion.
I noticed that. That was like the first thing I noticed.
Of course it
I
was.
have to be honest.
Yeah, you can't beat it. I mean, again, go to farm shows in California. There's nothing like it, right?
I'm down if we're gonna do that. Yeah.
Yes, right. Um, so that's really fun. They also have a special place for international guests to gather and meet up, and that's fun. I've been in there a few times. There's an international reception, and because this really does bring in people from around the world. And I have always found that to be so interesting. These are places where I've talked with people from India and from Australia and just all kinds of places. And they're almond growers and they're grape growers and they want to learn about the latest innovations that are going on. And so they come out there to see what's going on and what because California is a leader in so many of these different agricultural segments. So they come out to California to learn what's going on and to see what's new. And it really is very exciting.
That's fantastic. I'm so glad that you are speaking and you're able to go. It is February 11th through the 13th in Tulare.
Yes. So we'll continue talking about this. We have a couple other things we want to chat about as well, but we need to take a quick break. This is the AgNet News Hour. I'm Sabrina Halvorson. She's Lorrie Boyer. We'll be right back.
Welcome back to the AgNet News Hour. Here's Sabrina Halvorson.
Welcome back. We've been talking this morning about World Ag Expo, which is happening this week at the International Agri Center in Tulare. It kicks off tomorrow, Tuesday, runs Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. Funny story, but there have been many, many years when this has actually happened on Valentine's Day. I have spent many a Valentine's Day out at the World Ag Expo. They need to make that a thing, I think.
They need a Valentine's Day pavilion. There you go.
Yes, they do. Maybe that's what the wine and cheese pavilion is for.
Oh, okay. Yeah, that would fit right in, wouldn't it?
You're spinning. Yes, many times I've had, son, honey, I'm sorry, I'm going to be out at the World Ag Expo for Valentine's Day. That's just the way that it goes.
Yeah.
But no, but again, it is a really fun expo. I'm always happy to head out there each year. We did have a couple other things that we wanted to chat about this morning. And one of them, we were talking about ag tech, and I know that this is something that you are really into. You really enjoy tech, Lori. So you had brought up this first, the on-farm robotics incubators. Can you tell me a little bit more about this?
So an incubator is a place where businesses can go and get started. So it's kind of already a setup, if you will, and you just kind of land in there with all of your stuff. So it's like plug and play. It's ready to go. So this is specifically, it's called Reservoir Farms. It is the first on-farm robotics incubator. And this is going to help people who are in the technology and robotics space not only get their business up and running, and in some cases, I think these businesses are already up and running, but the primary goal of this particular incubator is to take the industry, take the robotics and the folks that are coming up and the really smart people that are putting the robots together and bridge them with agriculture and try to find out where in the agriculture space they can play and kind of fill that gap, because it has been said, according to some information that I've gotten here and I'm reading, it has been said that it's really hard for these manufacturers and these companies to really get in with the ag industry, to kind of get into the boots on the ground. So Reservoir Farms is offering a model where these startups can get side by side with growers. So the incubator is giving them a space, not only for office and meetings and all that fun stuff, but also actual fields. They're giving them field space so they can go in and they can test and use the equipment. They have lots of partners, including, of course, academia, farm bureaus, several different partners that are taking part in these. I love this idea. I think that it is such a great idea, whoever came up with this, but the gripping, I don't know where that word's coming from, bridging the gap between lab-based research and real world application. So we are going to be seeing this in the San Joaquin Valley here and in other parts of Central California, where they will be actually testing some of this equipment. And they're going to have a little bit of money behind them to be able to do this. Some of the goals will be to produce high value specialty crops, hopefully to help address labor shortages. As we know, and we've talked about, that's kind of some of the premise behind robotics in general, to help companies be profitable on both sides of the aisle, both for the manufacturing of robotics companies as well as the farmers. And of course, we don't want to leave out this word because we want to talk about this every time we can in agriculture: climate smart technologies.
Mm.
That's something you and I talk about a lot, I think,
We
for
do talk about that a lot.
next few years. I mean, we wouldn't want to talk about ag and not have that term in there. Not that I'm opposed to it. It's just, it's an interesting term to me.
Yes, and it doesn't quite roll off the tongue.
It doesn't. And to me, farmers are already doing this. So
Yeah, I have to agree. Yes, the farmers are already very focused on sustainability and and the climate. I did notice that these incubators, the first ones are opening in Salinas and in Merced this year, and great locations for projects like this to be in Salinas and in Merced, because again, agricultural centers, and we've got the agricultural center of the Central Coast and then an agricultural center, in the Central Valley. So such a neat idea to again be helping advancements in ag tech. And like you mentioned, it can be hard for some of these tech companies to break into agriculture, but it's so necessary.
it is necessary. And, you think from even what we were talking about here recently with the Farm Bill, just getting into the farming industry is expensive and hard and takes a lot of knowledge and networking. So I can see where this is a struggle for new companies that are entering this space.
Yeah, absolutely. And we will continue talking about this. We do need to take a quick break, but we'll continue chatting about this when we get back. This is the AgNet News Hour. I'm Sabrina Halvorson. She's Lorrie Boyer. We'll be right back.
Welcome back to the AgNet News Hour. Here's Sabrina Halvorson.
We are talking this morning about ag tech, and you were telling us about these incubator projects, Reservoir Farms, the first on-farm robotics incubator, with 2 locations opening up in Salinas and in Merced, both expected to open up early this year. It's such an interesting program to get more of this, this type of tech that we need in ag available, and to build the development of that. And it can lead to so many things like improving labor availability and costs, and increasing or creating better ways just to do our agricultural practices, anything from irrigation to harvesting to applying inputs and things like that. So such important tech, and to have places where people, companies can go and test it and develop it. Fantastic programs.
Reservoir Farms is opening 2 locations, 2 different incubator locations in the Salinas Valley and in Merced, and they're doing that anytime. So that'll be really cool. Have to kind of watch for that. And this is just a couple other little things here before we talk about some developments in composting. But participants can lease these, because they're incubators, can lease these fields without having long-term leases. So they could go shorter term if they want to. It can really be a flexible setup for them. And as I mentioned, there's going to be space for workshops and networking and office space and all those kinds of things, but also these specialty pre-planted crop fields will be available for them to be testing. I also just wanted to mention one other thing in regard to the partners that they have in academia and in other parts of the ag industry. The Western Growers Association is actually offering a validation process. I think that's even more special here. So they are going to have quantitative scorecards that offer crucial metrics on scalability, efficacy, and financial variability. So not only do these robotics companies have an opportunity to come in, get entwined with agriculture and the agriculture industry, test out their products, but they have an opportunity to have some sort of validation certificate at the end of what they're doing that they can present to the industry. They can present to farmers and companies and say, we are valid. We do have prove-it points, and we do have industry backing from the Western Growers Association. And I think that is a huge benefit to this.
Yes, absolutely agree. Western Growers has been so helpful in other like incubator type projects as well. And they have another center open um, in Salinas, I believe, as well. But and I wanted to bring that up too and give them credit for this with Western Growers Association being a key um, part of this as well, a partner in this. Also, UCA&R, Hartnell College, Merced College all have roles in helping with this innovation happening. So these types of partnerships can be extremely beneficial to the future of agriculture here.
You're right. Just get them one step closer to commercialization.
Right, exactly. So, it's going to be really neat to see how this progresses. I'm so interested to see what are some of the first projects that come from this, the success stories that we'll be hearing
Yeah.
about in a year or so. That was really exciting for me when Western Growers opened up their first center in Salinas. I went to the grand opening of that, and this was several years ago. But then recently, I was talking with somebody who had started her own ag business, and it was an ag tech business, and she was part of that incubator program. And I
Hmm.
thought I loved seeing that kind of full circle come, and discussing how important programs like that are to allow people, you know, to just really give them the space and the resources that they wouldn't otherwise have to create, new computer programs, software, tech, machines, things like that. That all, I mean, that's hard to get into, but then when you have programs like this that give you not just resources, but literally a working area, someplace where
Mhm.
you can go and actually work on this, that she said was just extremely beneficial.
Got to be an expensive industry as well to
Oh
get
yeah, I can only
products
imagine.
going. Yeah. Wow.
Yeah. All right, we're going to take a quick break. When we come back, we're going to talk about composting, but not necessarily in the way that you always think of. We'll be right back. This is the AgNet News Hour. I'm Sabrina Halvorson. She's Lori Boyer.
Welcome back to the AgNet News Hour. Here's Sabrina Halvorson.
Welcome back once again. We are going to talk about composting. And so this is a proposed composting bill that is specifically looking at wine grape growers. So now, we have talked about this in the past that because of the air regulations, that agricultural burning has been banned in California. It's been in the works for many, many years, but has finally taken effect. And there's good reason for that. The agricultural burning did contribute to air quality problems in California, especially in the Central Valley area. As we've discussed before, I'm one of those people who grew up there. I had childhood asthma. I've got adult asthma. And part of that is because of just the air quality. And agricultural burning was one of the things contributing to that poor air quality. So it needed to be handled. However, that there still is the problem of having agricultural waste that needs to be dealt with. And when we're talking about agricultural waste, we're not talking about like plastic jugs or anything like that. We're talking about vines, branches, trees, you know, other crop parts, leaves, things like that. So, these things that would have been burned, what are you going to do with it now? Well, a natural answer is composting.
Yeah, I didn't realize that you weren't really allowed to compost too terribly much on your operation. So this bill, I think it's called Senate Bill 279, and it will allow an increased amount of composting. Okay, so here it is. This is what I thought. So farms can currently compost a little bit. It's capped
Hmm.
at 1,000 cubic yards. This bill would give farms the ability to compost up to 5,000 cubic feet of compost a year. They can either sell it or they can give it away.
Yeah. So there's an additional benefit too, because if you've got many, many acres, providing organic material for you to compost, that could also lead to just another little bit more extra cash in the pocket, if you're able to sell the compost, because who wouldn't want that good compost?
Yeah, it's all natural, be great for your fields. Now, what
Hmm.
I'm not 100% sure on, and we won't have time to delve into this too much, is when it comes to the wine grape side of things, to the vines and such, if there are certain fields that you, or certain crops, I should say, that you can or can't use it on. I guess I don't know enough about that part of it, the biology part of it to know.
Right, right. And that's an interesting thought too, is, what are there any restrictions? In fact, we don't know. But another thing I found really interesting in this bill too, is that it also not just agricultural composting, but also it increases community composting and urban farms and school farms. They are all now currently capped at 100 cubic yards. This would also increase their composting up to 500 cubic yards of green waste. Again, we're talking about green waste. We're not talking about trash.
Yes.
So this also encourages more composting from those places as well. Again, urban farms, school farms, and there are many school farms in California. So to increase that type of composting as well, reinforces what a good practice it is around the community too.
It kind of goes back to my questioning on biology. I'm just throwing this out there. Why even restrict it if it's green and it's a natural aerobic process and it breaks down, in this case, vines and things from grapes? Like, why limit it at all? I'm wondering.
That's a great question. I was curious about the same thing. And I wonder, first off, sometimes composting can be unpleasant when you're talking about things biodegrading. There's smells involved.
Sure.
So if you're in a city center and you've got an urban farm or a school farm or something that's composting, do you want a great big pile of compost?
Fair
Out in
enough.
the farm areas and our more rural areas, I can't see that that would matter as much. But yeah, why is it restricted? I mean, you could say that about so many things in California. Why is this restricted?
Well, I think you have a good point, and you're probably absolutely right. So,
Yeah.
yeah,
And there's also pests involved too. So anytime you've got, again, just through the natural decomposition process, there's going to be bugs as well. So if you're in a city where bugs are already so prevalent anyway, do you want to bring in more because of the compost? I would say yes, it's better to have bugs in your compost than, for all the other reasons we have bugs in the city.
sure.
But I'm a rural person, so what do I know? Yeah, but it's
Well,
all the way around. It's interesting.
it sounds like a good solution to me anyway, to be able to increase the ability and the capacity to compost. And it's better for the air quality, as you talked about in the San Joaquin Valley, not very good.
Hmm.
Other entities can use it if it's going to be able to give this away. And it's a learning opportunity for students that will be doing it on those school facilities that you mentioned.
Right, it is. And also, again, going back to like urban farms, just teaching city people more about composting and agricultural methods and how good, how crops are and things like that, and just through natural processes. Anytime that we can expose the people in the city to more of these natural crop processes, I
Mhm.
think helps them understand a little bit more about agriculture and the needs of agriculture as well, too. So it's another way that agriculture can be a little bit more visible in the city too.
Yes, yeah. And it's a pretty fascinating thing. I've been out to a few composting sites, most recently to a livestock composting site. Yeah, the smell was not pleasant on that, but it is very interesting. They do have to use a tractor in his case anyway, and they would literally turn these piles because it's like a natural anaerobic digestion process. So they have little bacterias that go in there and they chomp it and break things down. And
Hmm.
what's really fascinating is what it looks like at the beginning versus what it looks like at the end. You would never guess. It's just that amazing. In that
Hmm.
case, it took several months. I'm not sure about plant material, how long it takes.
Yes. So I compost at home, but I cheat. I have a kitchen countertop composter, and we put
Oh,
our food scraps into that, and
mhm.
then you push the button and it does the whole, it dries it and it grates it down and
Ah,
grinds it, I should say, down, and it's a really interesting process. And what made me think of that is you're talking about it does not look like you would expect. It comes out looking like dirt. I'll put in bananas and whatever and salad leftovers, and it all comes out just looking like dirt. And it always brings back to mind how important it is to know that we can be replenishing our soil. We talk a lot about soil loss and about the nutrients in the soil, losing the nutrients in the soil and stuff, but composting like this on this large scale, not necessarily my kitchen composter, that's such a small scale, but large scale composting like what we're talking about here can help rebuild our soil so much because we're putting so many nutrients back into it. And also just soil itself. Composting makes soil, and it makes good, healthy soil in most cases. So this can be a very good tool for ag. And it doesn't, I mean, I don't know why, again, it was restricted or why it was limited, but it makes a lot of sense to make this more available.
Yeah. Well, I just learned something because I had no idea you could buy a composter for your countertops. So there you go.
You can, and we'll talk off mic because I love mine.
I didn't even know that. See?
Yes. Yes, you can. Yeah, and what I really like about it is it has a carbon filter, so those smells we were talking about don't come into your kitchen. So I like that a
All
lot.
right. I learned something new every day. I love it.
Yeah,
Okay.
I do think though that the old-fashioned way, like when I was a kid, we had a compost pile in the back because we had, a large space. And I do think that that's better than the kitchen counter composter. God, I couldn't spit that out. But if you are in a situation where you can't have a big pile of trash in your backyard,
Yeah.
the countertop composter works really well.
Yeah. Well, I was just used to my grandma's coffee can.
Yeah, there you go. See how things have changed? All right. Well, we are out of time for this segment. We will be coming back, but this is the AgNet News Hour. I'm Sabrina Halvorson. She's Lori Boyer. We'll be back in a moment.
Welcome back to the AgNet News Hour. Here's Sabrina Halvorson.
This segment is brought to you by UPL. We're talking today with Cassie Reeser. She is a technical service manager for UPL. We wanted to talk today about ease of use with Axios. Now, I know that Axios is a product that we've been talking a lot about because it has a lot of benefits. But tell me, when you're selecting a fungicide to use in almonds, what are some of the features that growers should look for?
Yeah, so kind of varies from grower to grower depending on what their pressures are and what their fields look like. But I would feel pretty comfortable in saying that first and foremost, growers are looking for performance, but they're also looking at low use rates, tank compatibility, flexibility in their application windows, whether or not these products will cover bloom versus summertime diseases, whether they're curative or preventative, systemic or contact based. So there's a lot of different things that growers will look for depending on their disease pressure. And of course, low use rate, short PHI, any MRLs, concerns, those are also things that they focus on as well. And especially resistance management, because, I know you guys had a previous talk about fungicide resistance, and that is always present in almost every orchard.
Let's talk about the EPA reduced risk pesticide. Why is that beneficial?
Sure. Yeah. So if you guys have any listeners who might not know what that means, the reduced risk pesticide program by the EPA ultimately expedites the review and regulatory decision-making process of conventional pesticides that pose less risk to human health and the environment and compared to existing conventional alternatives. And the goal of this program is to quickly register commercially viable alternatives to those riskier, older conventional pesticides, that contain neurotoxins or are harmful to human or environmental health. So when growers and PCAs see that a pesticide is marked as reduced risk, they know that this fungicide meets the criteria and means that it poses less risk to human health, which means their operators and mixers and loaders will be safe from those harmful side effects from older chemistries, as well as it poses a lower risk to the environment. So ultimately, it's great for environmental health. So having this feature can really help keep these new conventional pesticides in the farmer's toolbox for disease control for a lot longer.
Great. So, what is your recommendation for an almond fungicide that provides all of the things that we've talked about?
Yeah, so Axios 20 SE powered by Keynote Pro is a great option for growers to use no matter if they're battling bloom or summertime diseases. And it is an EPA reduced risk pesticide, and it has that low use rate. And so growers can really use this product with wherever it fits in their program up to that 14-day pre-harvest interval. So they can really use it almost season long for disease control.
For our almond growers, what's the benefit of being able to use that for such a long period of time?
Yeah, so if they have a kind of a set program that they are used to using, they can kind of use Axios to fill or bridge the gaps in efficacy or disease control. And so they can really fit it to their field and their program. So that flexibility, that tank mix compatibility, and ease of worker handler use really makes Axios a flexible tool that they can kind of make work for them. So it's a great little puzzle piece that fits in many different programs.
Great. And so for our listeners who would like to get more information, where can they do that?
To contact their UPL sales rep, reach out to them. You can reach out to me. And then we also have a link on our website, which is upl-ltd.com/US.
Welcome back to the AgNet News Hour. Here's Sabrina Halvorson.
We are wrapping up the day today with some ag news. Tariffs on Canadian imports into the U.S. were postponed until March, and some Canadians are saying they welcome tighter border security, but they're not sure it's needed. Here's Dennis Guy.
President Donald Trump has decided, at least for now, to postpone tariff action on Canada and Mexico until early March. Trump has long said that his use of import tariffs is a show of economic force against nations that refuse to bend to his demands. But the new U.S. president has not been very clear about just what exactly those demands are for his two closest neighbors. Mr. Trump says he wants Canada and Mexico to stop the flow of migrants and fentanyl at the U.S. border, but offers only vague benchmarks to gauge responding efforts. When asked on Monday morning what Prime Minister Trudeau could offer in order to avoid tariff action, Mr. Trump's immediate response was, "I don't know." In a social media post on Monday, Prime Minister Justin Trudeau described security actions that are already in progress under Canada's $1.3 billion border plan, which includes deployment of improved surveillance technology along with additional security personnel. Pierre Poilievre, who is the odds-on favorite to be Canada's next Prime Minister later this year, was asked what he thought of the Canadian government's response and if those actions might be enough to satisfy President Trump's goals.
You'd have to ask President Trump what his goals are. We need to protect our borders, not to please any other foreign leader. I've been calling to reinforce our border for about 8 years now, and I haven't been doing that to please anyone in the White House. I've been doing it to save the lives of our people.
According to American border data, whether it be illegal migration or the flow of fentanyl from Canada into the U.S., it is quite clear that the numbers are less than 1% of the southern border Mexican numbers. Canada's High Commissioner to the United Kingdom, Ralph Goodale, is a former Canadian finance minister and a former agriculture minister. Like Pierre Poilievre, Goodale says that Canada needs to beef up its border security to guard against long-standing smuggling problems originating on the U.S. side. And Goodale says it appears that every time Donald Trump is asked to clarify the rationale for his tariff action, Trump's reasons change.
Well, as you know, the rationale changes from news conference to news conference. I think the reference to this, which is under U.S. emergency legislation, is simply a hook to hang the legal basis for the action, but the facts just don't support it. The greater problem is the movement of illegal drugs and illegal guns from the United States into Canada.
The lack of detail in President Trump's demands appear to be as much of his strategy as the threat of the tariffs themselves. Reporting from Canada, I'm Dennis Guy.
February is American Heart Month. Chad Smith has more.
Despite recent medical advancements, heart disease remains the #1 killer of men and women in the U.S. and worldwide. Sheldon Koenig, president and CEO of Aspirion Therapeutics, says rural populations have higher rates of cholesterol than urban people.
A study from the American Heart Association says some cardiovascular conditions like stroke and heart failure are showing increasing death rates. The situation appears worse for people living in rural counties in the U.S., where cardiovascular mortality is rising.
Koenig knows firsthand how important regular cholesterol testing can be and now takes a treatment to control his cholesterol. He says cholesterol can be a silent killer.
High LDL, or bad cholesterol, typically doesn't produce any notable symptoms. That means people can have significant high levels without realizing it. potentially leading to serious health complications like heart attacks and strokes. The only way to figure out if there's potential danger is to know your LDL levels through a blood test.
He says rural residents are often overlooked by the makers of medicines. Chad Smith reporting.
The first USDA food price outlook of 2025 provides both a recap of food price trends from last year and some of the forecasts pertaining to this year. Rod Bain reports.
Among USDA's monthly food price outlook series of reports, January and July are two main months of focus. USDA economist Megan Schweitzer explains for the January report.
We have complete data on what happened to food prices last year. In January, we have full data from 2024, so we can look back and see what happened in 2024.
This is in addition to the comparison of food prices between November and December of last year. So what were the trends reflected in the January food price outlook?
For all food, prices increased by 0.2% in December, and they were 2.5% higher than they were in December of 2023.
Comparing food prices for at home, groceries, versus food away from home, restaurant prices.
Food at home prices rose by 0.1% in December and were 1.8% higher than they were the prior year. And then food away from home prices rose by 0.3% in December and were 3.6% higher than they were at this time last year.
Among the categories of food prices of note, eggs.
Egg prices rose by 8.4% in December, and that was due to ongoing effects of the avian influenza outbreak that's been going on since 2022. Egg prices in December were up 36.8% from last year, but those prices are still below where they were at the peak of the outbreak at the beginning of 2023.
Another product category of interest in the January food price outlook.
Prices for beef and veal declined in December by 0.2%, but prices were up by 4.9% from last December. Other than eggs, beef and veal was the fastest growing category over the past year.
Schweitzer adds that for projections for 2025 food prices,
overall for food at home prices in 2025, we are expecting them to grow by 1.3%, which is just 0.1% higher than what we saw in 2024 when grocery prices grew by 1.2%. And that's lower than the long-term average over the past 20 years, which has seen average annual growth of 2.6%. We're really expecting kind of this trend that we've seen since the beginning of 2023, where prices have moderated following those really high increases in 2022. We're expecting to see that continue into 2025.
And specifically for egg price forecasts for this year,
we are predicting egg prices to increase by 20.3%, and that is the category that we expect to grow the fastest by far.
I'm Rod Bain reporting for the U.S. Department of Agriculture in Washington, D.C.
That's our show for today. This has been the AgNet News Hour. I'm Sabrina Halvorson. On behalf of Lorrie Boyer and myself, thank you for tuning in.
To get more information on the topics you heard today, visit AgNet West at agnetwest.com. You can also stay connected by following us on our social media at AgNet West on Facebook, Instagram, and X. Also look for Sabrina Halvorson on Facebook, and be sure to subscribe to our podcast by searching for AgNet West on your podcast app. Thank you for listening to the AgNet News Hour from AgNet West. AgNet West Radio Network, your primary choice for agriculture news.